The University of Missouri is home to numerous labs, but the Department of Human Development and Family Science, or HDFS, is perhaps one of the most extensive and historic that you can find. From education to research, HDFS focuses on the science of being human through interactions with family members, teachers, schools, peers, social media, and romantic partners. I'm Rachael Norden, and in this final episode of 2025, I talk with Dr. Antoinette Landor, Associate Professor at HDFS, on the year that was 2025, and the different ways that we can set resolutions and goals that prioritize connection in 2026.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of an exciting time to think about New Year's resolutions. One of the things that I tell my students all the time, that no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, that it's undeniable that we are living history. And for that alone, it makes this time a unique time to be alive. And I also think the same when I'm thinking about New Year's and coming up with resolutions, that this is really our time to press a pause button on life and think about what ways can we consider not just kind of what's happening to us in this current world, in this current climate, but how can we actually shape our own lives and think about things that we can do to potentially change our future in our 2026.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you spoke to us living history right now. Again, no matter where you fall on the spectrum, nothing can be denied that what we are all experiencing right now is going to go down recorded. So in the context of that, of course, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we may be sitting here going, I'd like to get to the gym with a consistent schedule, or I would like to draw more consistently. Of course, those kinds of resolutions and goals are still ringing true, but it seems like a lot of people are having a lot of deeper conversations about themselves and what they want to bring to the new year right now. So given the context of the history that we're living right now, I'm just interested to know if there's any thoughts you have around the depth of conversations people are having right now, and if there's changes to how we approach this thought process right now, because it feels a lot more intimate, what we're bringing to the table right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think as a human developmental scientist that one of the things that I do in my own kind of thinking of New Year's resolutions, and one of the things that I would encourage for the listeners is to think about your resolutions, not just kind of from an individual perspective, but think about it in connection to the folks around you, because this really is a critical time to maintain connections, but also grow new connections. And so I no longer use one or two New Year's resolutions and say, that's it, be healthy. Not specific enough. Now I really do put my New Year's resolutions in what I consider kind of three buckets. So kind of this first bucket is like a relationship focused bucket. The second bucket would be more of a family-focused bucket. And then the third is kind of that individual bucket. And then I can kind of, give examples of what those buckets are. But as we do in human development, that we really focus on individuals and context, right? So it's not just about we all live and grow in isolation to other people around us, but it really does matter, even in our New Year's resolutions, that it matters how we're making connections in our families, in our relationships with our friends, with our siblings, and even how we're making connections in the culture around us as well.
Yeah, I love that. So give me a little bit more info on those buckets.
Sure.
I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, so for the listeners, take note. So like the first bucket, that relationship-centered goals. I really for me, it's really about being more present and intentional with the relationships that are in my life. And these are not romantic relationships. These are the relationships with my friends, my girlfriends, who may not live here, may live all across the country. And so it's about, for example, being more present with them. Like oftentimes we group chat, we group text. We definitely send emails to each other, but how can we all kind of think about how can we be more connected to those people, more present? And it may be that instead of text, that we call them. We actually spend time listening and not multitasking and doing all the other things that we do in life, right? While we are texting the group chat, that we actually take a moment to not multitask and listen and maybe do more FaceTimes with those folks. And so for me, for 2026, in terms of my relationship-centered goals, is really to have protected connecting time with those around me, with my siblings, with my friends, and making sure that I'm intentional about being more present and getting off of just texting them or using social media to connect.
That is such an interesting perspective and like a relevant one, as I am thinking like we really have lost the art of just picking up the phone and calling and using our voices to communicate.
Yes.
That is such a good point and makes a huge difference in the connections that we're having with our loved ones. Because you're right, we in the age of social media and the age of internet, we might have friends and connections thousands of miles away from us, but we never hear their voice or see their face. And that's very interesting. That's an interesting bucket.
Yeah, and especially for many of us adults, right? That a lot of times we say this about the generations under us, right? My Gen Z students, right? We say, oh, those kids, they're doing all the texting and they're on social media. But we find in research that adults are just as locked into social media as Gen Z. And so even for us as adults, that we really do need to kind of really be intentional about connecting to those around us and getting off of text and trying to make calls.
I think that's a great resolution. I may be taking that one from you. Okay, so bucket 2 you said was more centered around family.
That's right. Yeah. So my family bucket, this really is about goals that support well-being of family systems as a whole and not just the individual. So when you think about kind of the family bucket, you're really thinking about in HDFS, we consider family not just a traditional family with 2.5 children, but if you're coupled, whether you're married or not, you're a family, right? That there are many kind of diverse families out there. So for example, if I thought about for individuals with families and children, that maybe their resolution is to spend more time together, creating family routines. And so that could be even doing something like family mealtime. And so although I do not have kiddos, for me and my partner, it's about the same thing, just as a couple. How do we create more time? Particularly for couples, we find that we're working more hours, spending more time away. And even in times in which we're in the same room, we both have our laptops out, right? And so that's not necessarily spending time together. So for families, how can you create even things like game night? So one of the things that I find all across my classes when I talk about family time with my students, that many of them say, even growing up, they didn't have weekly family meals or even things like weekly family game nights. And so I encourage them, even as the semester ends and when they go away from the summer, how can you encourage your family to once a week, can we play a game? Can we play a game even to maybe learn about their grandmother's history and how did she live through the world, right? How can that history be passed along from generation to generation? And so it's kind of like the small things that sometimes we take for granted.
Yeah, it sounds like the difference between just spending time together parallel and intentional quality time together. And again, just kind of getting back to our human roots, it sounds like to intentionally build this time and pull ourselves out of whatever distraction that we're getting ourselves through right now, and really locking into our relationships and the legacy that builds within our families and our loved ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's, some of my friends, I mean, they are taking their kids to soccer and to, after school. One is going to soccer, one is playing football, one is dancing. Um, the wife doesn't get off until 7 o'clock p.m. And so oftentimes I rarely hear them say that they have a particularly scheduled family time. And so, for the listeners, if that's you, I would encourage you to find a time out of the week, whether it's a Sunday morning or some random day during the week. If it's 30 minutes, if it's an hour, when everyone in your family is there, find time to connect.
Yeah.
Whether it's playing games or just having a meal together.
That's wonderful. Okay, so the third bucket was the individual bucket.
Yes, so this is the cool bucket, right? I think we all have, I think probably historically, most of us think
Probably
of.
the bucket that most people are
Absolutely.
tossing into at the beginning of the year.
Absolutely, and that's why I put it last. Because we all kind of think of ourselves when we think of New Year's resolutions, but I would encourage you all to think about those other buckets first. So for me, my New Year's resolutions are my personal goals pertaining to this individual centered bucket. Is number one is social media detox. I think we all need a social media detox.
I have been heavily considering this one for myself going into 2026. And working here at NPR, sometimes you have to unplug. And yeah, that's a good goal.
Yes, and I consider social media not just Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, but it's also Rumble, Twitch, YouTube, which a lot of us watch YouTube as well. And so if you really want to do a detox from the noise, and for me, right, it's also, I'm talking about myself here. I think 2026 would be a good time because there's a lot of noise happening around us. And you don't even have to go cold turkey, right? So you could say maybe after 5 o'clock, I'm not going to pick up my phone.
And and it's so hard. It can be
hard.
so hard, especially given the conversations we were having previously around how people communicate these days. Even to unplug from social media is to lose touch with our communities in some way, in some strange way. But it also sounds like the previous two buckets would be a really great way to supplement the third bucket.
Absolutely. And even so, in my individual bucket, I also have two other things that for me kind of connects. I always do a dry January. I don't know if you have heard of dry January
for sure.
before. So I also do a dry January. And so for me, it's just kind of, and for me, it's not drinking alcohol. I love cocktails. And one of the ways that I connect with my girlfriends, even here, is we go out to eat. We go to happy hour, right? That's our way of connecting. And so when I'm not drinking alcohol, when I'm having a dry January, then that changes my relationship with my friends.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have to be cognizant of that and think about what are the other ways in which we can connect. And so I think one of the kind of the pure forms of our resolutions is making sure that it fits into the reality in which you live. And so the people, and it's again, that's an example of how the people around us play a huge role in how our resolutions are actually successful or not successful.
Yes. I say yes so hesitantly because I'm thinking of my own life right now, and I'm like, you are so right.
Yeah, I mean, and some folks call it a pause January. So it doesn't have to be just alcohol, right? It could be that you want to move away from caffeine, or it could be that you're an impulsive online shopper. It could be, I think many of us are just kind of news junkies. So the constant news consumption.
Yeah. I do like the way that you put it, that we can take it a little bit more in these bite-sized portions. I can only speak for myself, of course, but sometimes the idea of setting a New Year's resolution seems so daunting to me because there's an expectation that you do it and it's the whole rest of the year. And that's really hard when you've built things into your lifestyle, when you've built things into your habits or your coping mechanisms, to just say, I'm not going to do this. And then with no expectation to
Yeah.
kind of fill that hole, for lack of a better word. So the idea of setting it to just January, a dry January, whether that's dry from drinking or smoking
Yeah.
or social media or whatever have you, gives you a month to really like wrap your head around it and then see how you feel about it at the end of the
Yeah,
month.
absolutely. I mean, because resolutions are personal goals for the year. So for 2026, you really should not look at them as it's not about motivation. It should not be about like a moral test of discipline and willpower, right? That it should be, how can I make these changes, positive changes that fit into the life that I have and the people around me? And in fact, if you create the space that fits into your reality, the people around you will help you to maintain those goals throughout the year if
Yeah.
you wanted to extend it further.
That is a really great perspective, I think, to look at this, because it really is, New Year's and New Year's resolutions. Marketing gets a hold of
Yeah.
it, and they really do paint it up as this big, motivated, disciplined thing that's going to change your life as soon as January 1st hits. But the idea of it being something that's a little bit more personal and a little bit more intimate and maybe doesn't have such an impactful explanation toward everyone around you, that it's something curated for your reality and for your life. And if it's something as small as choosing to set down the phone at a certain time each day, or something as big as wanting to drop 100 pounds throughout the
Yeah.
year, it's whatever fits your personal life.
Absolutely.
And that is enough.
That is enough. And that kind of speaks to my last, under kind of this individual centered goals. My last goal is actually, I get it from my students. It's about touching grass, right?
Get out and touch some
Yes,
grass.
touch some grass. That I think many of us are just, we're so exhausted with what's happening in the world, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. And I think in times like this, particularly in 2026, that it's going to be important for all of us to touch grass, meaning, so this is the Gen Z vocabulary here, to get outside, do something different, step away.
I
Yeah.
fully agree. Get outside, touch some grass, hug a tree, put your feet in some dirt.
Correct. Be one with the
Be
environment
one
again.
and get grounded, because Lord, we need it.
We do. And so if you take nothing away from this, right, one of the cool things about being a professor, and one of the things that I love about being a professor is that as I get older, every year I get older, but my students stay the same age. And so they really keep me young. And it's through phrases and all of their lingo, right, that I get like new perspective. And so for me, I'm like, that has to be
It has
in
to
my
be.
2026
I actually
goals.
think about that pretty often, and how often I just like don't even go out to my backyard, and then I'll have that thought and I'm like, I got to get out there. Just breathe some
Just
air that's not
breathe.
in the house.
Yes.
It's so true. And it's these little things. It really is the little things that make the biggest impact and have the biggest ripples in our life.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing all of your thoughts on resolutions and your different buckets. I love this visual for it. I've never looked at it like that. And somehow it makes it a lot more manageable,
Yeah.
I feel like, to separate things and also remember that it's okay to have goals that are not just about you, and that the goals you have outside of yourself probably will make the goals you have with yourself a lot easier to integrate into your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way of
Yeah.
putting that all together.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Landor. I am excited. I feel motivated to go into 2026 now.
So I guess I could just really say, just kind of a general takeaway for the listeners is this, right? That goals are sustainable when we stop treating them as personal tests of discipline, and we really start seeing them as a way to support our relationships, our families and our well-being. So as you were saying, right, that it really is about, if we want to make this sustainable, that we have to bring in those relationships, those family members, in order to motivate ourselves, but motivate the others around us to keep it going in 2026. So good luck, listeners. Think small. It doesn't have to be these huge dramatic resolutions. Think small, and see you perhaps in 2027.
2026? Even 2027, yes. Oh my gosh. Let's get through 2026 first. And a happy new year to everyone out there. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Antoinette Landor, Associate Professor at HDFS. If you'd like to learn more about HDFS and the work that they do, visit hdfs.missouri.edu. And a happy new year to all of our listeners here on Thinking Out Loud and at KBIA. Now, get out there and go touch some grass. It's Thinking Out Loud from KBIA 91.3 FM.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot